It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn, Vincent. It's said that everyone deserves their day in court. But what about a lawyer to stand beside you in it? For about 3 years, Detroit's Right to Counsel program has given free legal representation to low-income tenants facing eviction. And the share of tenants who walk in with a lawyer has gone from almost none to nearly all. Research credits the program with keeping families housed and saving the city money. But this program is running low on cash, and its future depends on the state, the feds, or philanthropy stepping in. What happens to tenants and to the court itself if it disappears? And how has it changed what justice actually looks like in that courtroom? To get into it, we have William McConico here. He's Chief Judge of Detroit's 36th District Court. Chief Judge McConico, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so for tenants in your court, legal representation jumped from 4% to 94%.
Yes.
Evictions have come down too, though that also overlaps with pandemic protections and a wave of federal rental aid. So separate it out for us. What has having a lawyer actually changed for the tenants in your court?
Well, it's changed everything. The entire the landlord-tenant division, I look at it as like pre-COVID, post-COVID. And this would be a kind of a long answer, which is not the best for radio. But 2019, I took some of my paralegal students to see a lecture with Chief Justice Bridget McCormick. She was speaking in Detroit. And I didn't know what she was speaking on, but one of the tenets of her speech, they used the word tenant, was concerning representation in landlord-tenant cases. And she put up some University of Michigan data, and it showed that compared to cities of our comparable size, demographics, poverty, educational attainment, Cleveland, Baltimore, Newark, New Jersey, the Bronx, Philadelphia, that they had a very high rate of representation, and we had a very low rate, and we had the highest eviction percentage of any city in America. And part of the reason was because of the lack of representation. There was not an action plan developed. This was just giving out information. After I became chief, there were meetings that were had concerning the right to counsel and bringing different types of ordinances or legislation to the city of Detroit. Mary Sheffield, at the time the council president, was really one of the spearheads for the city council, and we met with her staff constantly. And there was a partnership between the city council, the mayor's office, Mayor Duggan, and then working with the courts to bring the right to counsel program to 36th District Court. And it has definitely changed the lives of our residents. Landlord-tenant law is different than any other type of law. You know, before I became a judge, I had never practiced landlord-tenant, and I was nervous to do a landlord-tenant case because the statutes are very specific, the rules are very specific, and if I, as a seasoned lawyer and a new judge, was nervous doing it, how can you expect a tenant, a person that has no knowledge of the law, to represent themselves, and you would get the outcome, which is a very high percentage of evictions, high default rates, and it was helping destroy the city of Detroit.
I mean, I just had reporter Aaron Mondry on the show from Outlier Media, and he is very steeped in the world of housing and evictions. And when we were talking about this program, I used the word transformative, and he enthusiastically agreed with that.
Oh, absolutely. And this is one where, and I talk to landlords and property owners all the time, and I said, this is not something that is a one-sided project. This is just to bring fairness to the system. No one should want to railroad someone. If you have a lawyer on the other side, a landlord really can have a better shot of negotiating a deal where a person can actually pay, though, live up to those type of payment plans. If a person is just agreeing to something because they don't know any better, that you're going to end up evicting that person. And you can literally see filings were over 30,000 in 2019. And our filings are under 20,000. They're 18. So that's 12,000 less cases being filed pre-pandemic. And also, even of those cases, the amount of actual cases that are going where a judge is signing a writ of eviction is so much lower since you have people able to work together on both sides and you get good outcomes.
Chief Judge, you see these moments up close. I'm wondering, when a tenant walks in with someone beside them instead of alone, with legal representation, with an attorney, what changes in the room, in how they carry themselves, in how the case goes?
Well, a person feel like they feel like they have a shot. They actually have a chance to have an outcome that may be beneficial for them. Either they may work out a deal where they can stay in the place where they're living, or they can work out an actual agreement where the law states that you may only have 10 days to move from when there's an adjudication. But with having a lawyer, you may say, I have a new place that I can move into in 30 days. Can negotiate that, and the other lawyer will agree to it. You have a chance to have a fair outcome. And a person, when they just come in and they feel like they're just going to get railroaded through the system, a lot of times they don't even show up. That's why defaults have gone down. Because when a person doesn't think it's a fair system, why am I participating in it? I'm going to get evicted anyway, so why am I even coming? And so we don't see that as much anymore.
I mean, I'm glad you're bringing up the fact about showing up, though, because that 94% of people who now are getting legal representation who are facing evictions, that only counts people who show up.
Correct.
The lawyer is there if you make it to court, but a tenant who can't get a ride or take off work can lose by default before anyone hears them. How big is that gap?
And that is why the first hearing is a virtual hearing. And so all you have to do is Zoom in. Actually, I have our presiding judge of the landlord-tenant division. She's actually with me today, Judge Reagan Evans, and we were talking about it. And the reason why we were talking about some of these things this morning, actually, in my first meeting, that you have a person that logs in. The judge will move them into a breakout room. They meet their attorney. They establish an attorney-client relationship. They go through their stories. They go through these things. And so when they come back for their second hearing, which is in person, they're not meeting a person for the first time. They are working with them over the 2 weeks or 10 days before then. And they have a lawyer. They have someone who is their advocate and who is going to work to advocate on their side. Also, a lawyer for the plaintiff, for the property owner, for the management company. They have a lawyer to negotiate with, to talk to, where they're not having to explain the legal process. They're not having to explain to a tenant what his or her rights are. They're talking to a colleague, and it helps further outcomes. And it's just, the legal system is built to have lawyers on both sides. I mean, I know it's a dirty thing to talk and say great things about lawyers, but our profession is a noble profession.
I mean, people will talk smack about lawyers until they need one.
Until they need one. And the system works better again when there's a lawyer on both sides. If it's just a traffic case, a traffic trial, and you have a person that's not represented, the case goes on longer. You have evidentiary hearings, but issues. When there's a lawyer on both sides, it's a fair system for both sides, and it meets the outcome of because the law is still there. It meets the outcome it's supposed to.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. My guest is William McConico. He's the Chief Judge of Detroit's 36th District Court. We're discussing the Right to Counsel program, which gives low-income residents free legal counsel to prevent eviction. The program is running out of money, so we're asking what its absence would mean for the city and its residents.
It would be devastating.
It sounds like it would be. I mean, you've given us a lot of info to think about here. I do also, though, want to think about some of the objections, because the sharpest ones anyway, seem to come from landlords. Some cite the problem of cost shifting, cases dragging out, tenants withholding rent without properly putting it into escrow, and owners eating months of losses. And we know that could potentially hit the small mom and pop landlord the hardest.
Absolutely.
Is there a fix that protects tenants without sinking the small owner?
Absolutely. And I tell anyone that'll listen, growing up, my father owned 4 houses on a street, Miller Street in Mount Elliott on the east side of Detroit. And he had mortgages on those homes. So the loss of rent for 2 months could almost lead to foreclosure, because this was not a big money making venture, but it was something that he did to have passive income. So I understand. In high school, went to try to collect rent on behalf of my father, and I understand again the hardship that if a person only has 1 or 2 houses, that you really can't withstand going 3 and 4 months without rent. Having a lawyer has nothing to do with that. What we've done is we have streamlined our system. Part of landlords want cases to move quicker, but we have court rules that we have to go by that are set by the state court administrator's office, meaning that there has to be 2 hearings. Pre-COVID, a person could be evicted in 1 hearing. No, they're entitled to a second hearing. If there are evidentiary hearings, if there's going to be a bench trial, there's a legal process that works. But you have a better chance with with a person having legal representation to have a escrow account set up properly, not just a person withholding rent, but having either through the city's new escrow, through BC that they have, or an escrow at the court. A person who is withholding rent because of repair issues, because of a lack of a certificate of compliance, they are to put their money in escrow. You can't just not pay rent. And once something is cured, that money would go to the landlord, or if it never gets cured, it's returned to the tenant. But those are not the reasons why things drag on. Things drag on sometimes because landlords don't provide, the records that they're supposed to. Their filings are not proper. If they don't have their deed, they don't have their certificate of compliance, those things require adjournments. Things happen, but we are moving our cases. And I let everyone know, 36th District Court is within the state guidelines of how from a case starts to when it finishes, and time has nothing to do with having a lawyer. It just makes it a fair system.
All right, Chief Judge, you've made the case for the Right to Counsel program, but the bigger issue, the reason why we're talking about this is because much of the money behind the program was federal pandemic dollars and philanthropy, and it's drying up.
Yeah.
From where you sit, if it disappears, what does your courtroom look like a year later?
I always say elections have consequences. When you see programs like this, you got to know where this funding has come from and make sure things can happen to keep that funding there. What would happen is we would go back to the majority. I believe we were at 4 to 5% of tenants had representation pre-right to counsel, and we would probably go back to very close to that number. Without the right to counsel, our agencies in UCH, Lakeshore, LADA, they would have to lay off their attorneys and their paralegals because the funding is coming from right to counsel, and you would go back to tenants. Eviction rates would skyrocket. You're going to have unstable housing stock. I believe when you have unstable housing, kids can't perform as well in school. I mean, they're just all kinds of things. There are human tolls to being evicted, and being evicted without a system where you even have time to find another place. Part of right to counsel actually is helping even if a person is being evicted, but to find another place to live. And so, we have affordability issues right now. We have all kinds of issues, and to then add taking away a safety safeguard right now would be catastrophic.
You talk about the human tolls, Chief Judge, and I realize that seeing the human tolls within the justice system has really shaped how you lead the 36th District Court. Talk about that.
Yeah, I always let people know I'm from the east side of Detroit. I've lived in Detroit my entire life except when I was educated. And this is not theory. These are your neighbors. These are our family members. This is our community. And when you have a unstable city, you're going to have crime going back up. You're going to have hopelessness going back up. We can talk about a renaissance in our city. We can talk about great new developments. But if people can't have shelter, How do you even get to that? How do we have a stable educational system if kids are living in cars or they don't know where they're going to stay and get food? And so what we have to set up is a legal system that's fair to everyone. Again, you cannot have a system that is skewed towards the tenant and a landlord or a property owner is being punished for just owning a business and trying to make a living. But what you want to do is you want to make sure you have a system where at the end of the day, you can have a system where there's a result that happens well, that works out for both sides. And that's what we try to do. We want to be user friendly. We want citizens to have access to services, and we want them to have access to lawyers. So I can't control the money for right to counsel, but if anyone asks me, I would say we have to make this a priority and figure it out. I mean, I know it's a zero-sum game. Money has to come from somewhere, but figure it out. This is a system that's working. No need to reinvent the wheel. Figure it out.
I want to bring up an example from Maryland, actually, and how it's paying for its right to counsel program. But before I do that, throughout the hour, we've heard about the toll that eviction takes. It's psychological, it's economic, it's a huge disruption to a person's life. Of course, I would be remiss not to think about the other side. When is eviction actually appropriate? When do you rule in eviction's favor?
Well, again, if right to counsel is only giving a person a right to have a lawyer, if a person has not paid their rent, and this is a non-payment of rent case, it's going to end in an eviction. But what can happen differently is the timing of the eviction. Whether there are services to maybe get federal help to pay the landlord. We do want people to look at Detroit as a city that if we do a development, build an apartment complex, that they're going to actually have people occupying it. If people cannot have tenants or occupy apartments, they're not going to build. So we want to make sure people are getting paid, but we want to make sure there's access to the resources. We want to make sure that the system is fair. And so a typical landlord-tenant case is going to be resolved within 45 days, and that's from start to finish. Some of them are finished earlier. Some take longer if there's a trial. If you have a situation where a tenant is claiming they don't have a furnace, they don't have electricity, you have to bring in things. You have to give the landlord has time to repair. But there are evictions. There are times when people just don't pay rent, or they tear up a place, or a landlord just doesn't want them anymore. They can do a 30-day notice, and then there's a process for that also.
I want to end on a potential solution here. The case or what is happening in Maryland right now, I should say, it has an interesting way of paying for its right to counsel. In that state, there are surcharges on landlords filing for evictions. Those funds are then used to pay to protect low-income renters from eviction. Do you think Michigan or Detroit should consider something similar in the last minute we have?
Well, I know Detroit is looking at the Maryland system concerning paying it. And as a former legislator, this is the one time I'm going to say that I'm going to defer that to the legislative branch to figure it out. We only handle it once it gets to the court, but I'm just an advocate that they need to figure it out and find the money, whether it's a surcharge, whether it's working with all of our philanthropic community out here to say, I know you have limited resources, but this is a place where we know it works. There's not a pilot program. This is a system that's ongoing, that's working. And then the city council and Mayor Sheffield, again, it's a finite budget, but this is something that we may want to, you have to shift things around sometimes, but this is a program that works, and I think it needs to be a priority.
Chief Judge William McConico of the 36th District Court, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's the Metro on WDET. Coming up, GLP-1s can significantly change people's eating habits. But we're wondering, is it changing our values too? That's next on the Metro. Stay with us.